I'm going to show you guys a couple of things today. Talk a little bit about neutral. I was thinking about this article that Machabo wrote where he discusses like 3 different styles of neutral, defines the kind of ground game that people played. And while I was thinking about it, I thought about some like quick tips that I could give people. So one thing about Poison is that she's one of the best grounded anti-airs in the game with crouching medium punch. Her crouching medium punch is really good. And it doesn't really matter kind of like where he even is. You see this? It's one of those buttons that it just kind of works. Let me show you something. See that? What ends up happening is I try to anti-air, and if he doesn't do a jump button, it just misses. And then obviously if I'm the Poison player, I can do stuff like this and be like use heavy whip or use EX whip or high heel or something if I think he's gonna empty jump. But one thing that you have to understand is that this is just one portion of neutral that you'll see a lot. People say about fighting games they don't like really oppressive offense because you have to guess a lot. This is a neutral situation, and obviously there's quite a bit of guessing involved. For a character like Poison, who has great anti-airs, despite all of those things being very good for this character, it's still a guess that she has to make it in neutral. Empty jump, lost. I'll do heavy whip. I get stuffed by the high jump heavy kick. I'll do heavy whip, right? These are all options you rotate. And as you try them, you realize that some of them will lose to some things and some of them will lose to other things. This is just a guess that you have to make in neutral. And something that I think when people talk about guessing in fighting games, they don't realize it applies to stuff like this too. The majority of footsies in fighting games, like ground game, whiff punishing, stuff like that, a lot of it is guessing. When I want to whiff punish a character like G, you're making a conscious choice in neutral and saying, I believe that G is going to whiff with some button. Let's say he's walking around and he's doing standing heavy punch a lot. That's like the read you make as a player. You think, oh, that's what he's going to do. That's like the read that you're trying to make in this situation. You're just making a guess on the ground about what he's going to do. You know, with a character like G, what does he do in neutral a lot? He does this. He walks back and forth. He buffers standing light kick into EX. It's very safe. You see that there's no real risk here from the G player to do this. But if for some reason I'm walking around, if I end up getting hit by it for some reason, I just get smoked and die. So when you see people doing stuff like this, they try to do something to beat it. They'll do something that's very far away so that, you know, it's something big, it's something heavy, it's high priority, it's gonna beat whatever option they stick out. This is another thing that you'll see people try to crush counter light buttons because this is like what they think is safe to do against this. I think he's gonna do standing light kick. If you're Urian, what's the best thing to do against buffered standing light kick? Maybe walk up heavy punch to try to crush counter it. What happens if the G player, instead of doing light kick, walks back? You whiff this heavy punch and he does crouching medium punch smash. That's just a guess that you're making on the ground that then is wrong, and then now this G player guessed correctly what you were gonna do, or even maybe he didn't even guess, maybe he just walked away from you. Every time you think to yourself, I wanna throw a fireball, you're guessing your opponent's gonna stay on the ground. Maybe this is your answer to beat his stand light kick, and you think to yourself, well, if he's gonna walk around and do stand light kick, I'm just gonna shoot these fireballs, and I don't have to worry about this standing light kick even being a problem. But then what ends up happening if the G player, instead of doing that, they do this? And, you know, his forward heavy punch comes out and it crush counters my fireball right there. It just clips me. The situation on the ground requires a guess or a decision from both players, and this constantly happens. It's not just the moments where you're on your back and you have to guess what your opponent's gonna do. I think people often underrepresent how often you have to make decisions and guesses in the neutral about just the most simple things. Let's talk about buffer normals. So there's a really easy set of options in neutral that you can rotate on the ground to make your ground game feel quite scary very simply, I think, especially with a character like Cammy. One is these far buffers. These are really low risk, high reward, and very, very effective. You're not really in any danger when you're doing stuff like this, right? Like, look at how far away I am, and I can't really contest any of this. This is really safe. The reason that something like this is good is because it can be mixed up with lots of other really effective options. I mean, you can do the same thing actually with walk back heavy punch, high priority button, something that you see quite a bit. It's easy to do. It's pretty low risk, high reward. If it hits, you get the knockdown. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very simple. So the second thing that you can do to add on top of this is dash. If I think someone's gonna dash in, what's gonna be my natural thing to try to stop it is, you know, hit these far buttons, right? And then that's when I get hit by that. So then I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to do anything. I'm just gonna sit here and block. And then he just dashes up and does down jab throw. So this right here, just these two options, rotating between them creates a pretty like powerful set of tools that you have available to you in the neutral. So let's say you introduce a third option, which is jump EX drill. So if I'm hitting this far medium kick to try to stuff, you know, whatever attack he's doing, and then I get really scared and I think to myself, maybe I should just block. I'm worried that he's gonna hit me with this far button in a drill or whatever it is. And then he just does jump dive kick. Suddenly he's in. And he's just in there and I have to deal with him. There's one low risk option and then one higher risk option, which is the dash. And even mixing up between those two is very useful on the ground. That's something that I think people don't often realize about neutral. It can be very simple. And despite that, it can be very effective. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. So what we saw from Momochi in Tokyo Game Show Finals was like a really simple but solid approach to playing ground game. And all he did is play Colleen, and he did walk up, back heavy kick, walk up, back heavy kick. And so what do you do to beat a button like this, right? You have to hit something fast to stuff it, or you have to let it whiff and whiff punish it. So the choice that Mago made was walk up medium punch with Karen. And all Momochi did is walk away, walk up, wait, let him whiff this medium punch, and he just did this over and over. Into vanity, into the knockdown, dash up. It's such a simple game plan. Yeah, it's definitely an easier said than done scenario, but it's something that's very interesting that neutral and footsies and ground game, people always talk about it like it's something very complicated and like it escapes the common player, right? But I don't think that's the case. So round one fight, we see Momochi walks up, and what does he do? Back heavy kick. This button is just a check. This button is only here, right? It crush counters, it does decent damage if it hits. This button is to create and force Mago to do another action. And the action he ends up doing is actually much, much better for Momochi because it creates opportunity and more damage for him. So check this out. So walk up, he blocks the crouching medium kick. He fires back with back heavy kick. Notice the immediate reaction from Mago is standing medium punch. That's what you want if you're Momochi. You want him to try to swing with standing medium punch so that you can beat that button. Walk up and hit fierce and crush it or whatever, right? So you see how he does back heavy kick like 4 times and then standing light kick? The back heavy kick is the setup. It's a tell. He's saying, hey, look at this big button I'm sticking out over and over. Don't you want to beat it with something? Don't you want to hit medium punch to stuff it? Don't you want to like jump at it to beat it? Don't you want to try to like, make it whiff and whiff punish it? It's a bait. He's forcing Mago to walk up and hit some button to stuff it or stay out of range and try to whiff punish it. And that's why you see already, the medium punch comes out. That's why you see already Momochi is trying to do medium kick up close to catch that button from far. See, okay. Yeah, that was beautiful, but this is what I mean, and you'll see it more and more as the set goes on. He really sets him up with the back heavy kick. Even stuff like dashing up in situations like that, you can get away with a little easier when Mago is worried about back heavy kick. He's doing like, and that medium kick, by the way, it's designed there to beat the medium punch. It's setting up whatever other like kind of neutral option Momochi wants to do after. Yeah, that was beautiful. That was great from Mago. He's just walking and blocking and saying like, look, I know you're going to go for this back heavy kick or, whatever other button you want. I'm just going to walk up and block it. And I think people often complicate how many choices you need to make on the ground. Particularly in a game like this, right? Where like you see it's just the 2 options. They're just throwing the same option at each other over and over and over and trying to see who will adjust first and making decisions about like, okay, I think he's going to adjust first, so I'm going to wait. You see that dash up from Mago? If Momochi thinks he's going to start dashing up, he's going to start doing like close buttons to try to stop it. Maybe standing light kick, maybe like the medium kick again. Yeah, just like that. And if you're Mago and you think, oh, he thinks I'm going to dash up, you just walk up and beat it with some kind of other button. Man, it's so funny to watch him control this ground with just one button. Really, like it's just back heavy kick over and over. It's just such a useful way to set up Mago and try to force him to stick out stuff that he's uncomfortable with. You see the medium punch and a medium punch? It's very clear Momochi's trying to set him up with a back heavy kick, and Mago is not often biting. You know what I mean? He's trying to keep it very safe. Remember when I talked about with Cammy, the buffers over and over with the heavy punch or the medium punch? This is another good example of like Mago keeping it close to his chest. Is it a similar idea in Tekken where you do down forward 1 side step? I think a more similar idea maybe in Tekken is doing something like Brian 3+4 or something, right? Or like something that's far away, and then when your opponent tries to step it or they try to like hit a button to counter hit it, then you just wait, let them whiff, and then whiff punish with like down 2-3 or like core circle back 2-4 or whatever it is. The options are simple, but the decision making and perfecting it is so hard, It's something that's so difficult, even for the best players to do. Everything I'm showing here, by the way, works with whatever character you want to play.